very much for inviting Snøhetta to this conference. The theme of my lecture will be more general, space and narrative, and the role of architecture in children's development. We think that the astonishment in childhood forms the basis for human development and experience, and that again means for the child's meeting with architecture, that the aim of the architecture should therefore facilitate the child's opportunity to explore the spatial environments as a basis for building relations between individual and the world. So, I also will introduce you a little bit to Snøhetta's philosophy and working method, because that you will see that as a red line through all our project, as a kind of basic how we approach to our profession and project and how we work with space in general. So Snøhetta, as you can see from the letters, the Ö, is a Norwegian office. But we have now several offices. The main offices are in Oslo and New York, and we have small offices, project-related in San Francisco, Innsbruck, and quite nearly in Singapore. We have projects all over the world. I think now we have 53 active projects, as you can see here, concentration of all in the Americas and Northern Middle Europe. This image represents very well how we see our profession. Since we have our name from this mountain in Norway, Snøhetta, we take all our people. Once in a year we gather here to make this tour mountain trip. And it's like in our profession, we have a lot of wind and it's not easy to go to the top, but when you finally reach the goal, you are more happy than ever. So our main office is based in Oslo and New York, and it's funny if you have to look at the map, they have a quite similar location. The one is in Oslo and the other one in Broadway, New York. And this is our Oslo office where I also work. It's an old renovated warehouse building close to the harbor in Oslo. This is the staff in Oslo. We are about 43, 44 architects, 9 landscape architects, 11 interior architects, and we also have brand design. And we are, I think now, 24 nationalities working here. So at some period, English had been the office language. This is an overview. Snøhetta has been part of several research projects, and this is we were followed by a PhD student for her thesis. She followed Snøhetta for 2 years, and the kind of roadmap, what are the creative drivers in work of Snøhetta. And that's actually what you see the overwork here. This is kind of how we drive forward our project and process. Because we are thinking that designing the process is of the same importance that to guarantee to guarantee the quality of the project. Also, that if you are in control of the process all over the way, you also are able to reach the architectural concept and realize so. Be generous. This is part of our creative drivers, that the generosity and how we work is a kind of main basis. How this is our workspace, and this is a map how we are organized. We are sitting totally in a flat structure, so to say. The only rule is that we change seats every second year, then the one person sitting at the window will get a more darker spot. And the projects are not, the people are not organized by project. So this is a kind of network of information. So on your way to your next team member, you will kind of all the way gather the information, and we will constantly keep a level of shared information, which is all the kind of basis for all the work, that we are constantly sharing information to keep this process going on. So of our workspace, and which is sometimes turned, because now we are talking about the children's space, turned to a carnival for all the children of Snøhetta. Transpositioning. Snøhetta has developed or systemized its own creativity process in a more workshop-based process where we invite clients, opponents, and a series of project-related people in a very initial phase of, we tried this with every kind of project, but we have of course more focus when the complexity rises, to together develop the basic concept of every project. And we see when we initiate these processes that it's much easier to involve everyone and also secure that we have this concept realized, because everyone involved from the very start in a project. That means also that you take responsibility. When you are kind of part in these initial processes, also as a client, you feel more responsible also to bring these projects into birth, so to say. So we also at the method use prototyping, of course, quite complex models, and we have a very well equipped workshop space. This was a 1 to 10 model, which is now 1 to 1. And this is a very small educational space, observation pavilion for reindeers in the bottom actually of Snøhetta, which is open 24 hours and it's used for school classes to observe reindeer and wild and nature life. Prototyping for another project, and where we then set up the prototypes in front of our office with this example here. Be generous. I'll show you some public projects of Snøhetta, because the generosity of space, what we always try with our project is to give something back to public. Accessibility is a key driver in our project, so when we design a big public project, for example, we try to increase the accessibility. In the ideal world that the plot is more accessible for everyone after project is realized than it was before. So openness and generosity is very important basis for our project. The first project, and that also was the startup for Snøhetta in 1989, we won the competition for the big public library in Alexandria in Cairo. And followed, of course, a little bit later, this is the Oslo Opera that some of you, if you're architecture in the audience, maybe have heard about. We won this competition. This project was finalized in 2008. This is it here? The opera, and this is where we sit actually. So the building site was very close when we have to follow up the project. Again, the generosity and public space. Of course, an opera has a big program. But what we tried is to make the roof accessible and to turn it into a big public landscape space. And I think personally that with the realization of the opera, the Norwegian attitude towards architecture, and we can also see that in political development has changed tremendously, because this has also been one of the main touristic attractions for Oslo and Norway. And this roof is 24 hours accessible, of course with reference from the Norwegian landscape that we also use quite often. And also you can see this, that's a foyer, and this also accessible, I think it's only closed by nights, and how the children use this space. And you can see it's also used for festival. So that's actually a dream that became true, besides of solving, of course, the opera problem, but also then establishing this big public space. Space and narrative, as I also talked about, this is a concept for the big cultural project that we have currently under construction in Saudi Arabia. in Dachan. And the basic concept for the overall architecture is an arc that consists of different pebbles. And you can see that the overall architectural shape or form is dependent on every single element. So all these pebbles represent different cultural functions. Actually, it's the first cultural project in Saudi public cultural project in Saudi Arabia. It has the first public cinema, a children's center, auditorium, educational center. So it's quite it's a small venture actually, this one. So the keystone, which we call the stone at the upper top, actually in the beginning had the children's center. So we can't take out one of the single, any of the single pebbles, because then the whole composition would, and the dependency between the pebbles and the function will clash. This is the competition rendering, and you can see that all the different pebbles contain these cultural functions that I talked about. This is now under construction. This is, I think, 1 month old. So we have actually always architects working on the building site. Again, the composition is also accessible by a big roof landscape. Some images from the different pebbles. This is the Great Hall, with history display, museum part, and educational center. Yeah, the next project goes into the same direction, but this is really a child space. It's extension of the visitor center for Swarovski that you maybe heard about, the producer of these small crystal, crystal features, all from necklaces to bigger objects. And the theme of the task was play. So it's a visitor center that's mainly designed for children, consists of 2 main elements. The 20-meter high play tower and the more horizontal outdoor landscape. And this project is opened now in April 2008. So we guide you a little bit through the project. You can see the 2 elements, the more indoor-related vertical tower and the more horizontal outdoor landscape. And the theme, what I mentioned, was play. So this is kind of how the experience of space in a more vertical setting, and the outdoor landscape in a more horizontal invitation to play. The facade image here from the play tower consists of, I think, 140 individual glass panels. And from the inside consists of 4 levels with different opportunities to play. And here you see it's completely transparent. And I will talk a little bit about the facade. And together with an artist, we developed a pattern consisting of animals that also has to do with some features Swarovski has in its product. And we try to generate you can say, so it's a silk screen print for the glass panels with a different pattern, density. And they are white from outside the print, and from the inside they are black. So from outside it's a kind of shimmering crystalline expression, and all the panels are individually, and the gradient is concentrated like that they look slightly curved actually, which is a nice architectural feature as well. And from inside they are black. Here you can see. They are straight, but they are kind of curved. Here you can see the organization of the vertical play tower, how the levels are organized. And 3 of the levels are linked by a big climbing net structure. So which I think it's in the first in the world, and of course we had to develop this feature together according to security, and in Austria and Germany it's quite serious with all these stamps for security, and we got the TÜV, as it's called, for this feature. Interior-wise, we worked with a color palette that is related to autumn leaves. So you can see here an extract and transferring that to all the treatment of the interior walls, lockers, of course, visitor center, and bathroom furniture, fixed furniture. And so that was all kind of developed within this natural language. Here you see the one, I think it's more of the ground levels in use, big excitement. And this great hanging structure where you, and as you see, you are kind of climbing in this structure and you have this contact with this beautiful landscape in Austria outside. The horizontal playground, kind of, from two levels. We have this more surface where you are invited to climb and sit and everything, and the more labyrinthic, dark space underneath where it's more fairy tale related. Here you see from the outside images. And the food and beverage part of course, always there's a cafe. Form follows environment. Next project I will show you is a competition entry for a Plus Energy kindergarten project that we developed for an area south of Oslo, the neighbor commune as it's called in Norway. And you will see how we kind of try to develop this sustainability project, once of course in regards of all the technical aspects in that kind of project, but also try to bring forward the social sustainability when you plan a kindergarten space for children. The general or the kind of entrance into the project is this watercolor drawing by a very old architect, Odd Østby in Norway, where he wrote a small narrative that follows this watercolor drawings, where he describes his very first expression from childhood, where he kind of went under an almond tree that his parents had in the garden, and he said this very initial experience with space that he calls Rumkunsten, space of art, where you walk in and you become part of it. So we had this image and thought in mind, where we try to use this, how a child kind of uses is maybe not the right word, but kind of is in nature, and transfer this to kind of architecture that is very close. It's somewhere between landscape and architecture. It's not really, it's an approach where we, of course, represent the site-specific context. This was a beautiful site. It's with a sloped hill, you have a lake at the bottom of it. And of course it's picked carefully from this future-built competition where with this energy aspect. So we try to develop a language and project that is kind of related, of course, to the context, site-specific context, but also kind of take into account what I tried to mention before, this relation, how children intuitively use landscape and kind of borrow some parts of this context and take it into our project. Here you see it. It has this nest kind of feature. It looks like not really like a stranger, but as if it has kind of grown off part of this context. So you can see it here from the top. The overall shape is kind of developed from this when you throw a stone into water and you have these rings of, and how these rings kind of interact with the landscape. So we have this atrium-based geometry, and also it's not so easy for you to see here. I can see on how we organize the landscape in 3 areas. One is of course the more protected area in the atrium of the building, Then we have the little bit more controlled kindergarten outdoor area that is related to it, and then it fades more and more into the original landscape with the trees and forest-like setting as it was before. So, of course, we were lucky with the site. So, it's coming to as close as possible, of course, to this experience. Not so easy to facilitate that in a kindergarten due to all the security aspects, but there are possibilities. So you can see how the plan is organized. It's a kindergarten, it's about 1,000 square meters. It's for 6 groups. 2 of them are for children from 1 to 3, and the rest are mixed from 3 to 6 years old. And each of these main rooms are about, I think, 100 square meters, so then you have a little bit scale. And the upper floor, you can see that the building is slightly tilted to one side. That is also due to that we have solar panels on top of the roof, so we are kind of working with the angle towards the sun to be able to harvest solar energy, because this is a plus energy building, meaning that the building itself also produces more energy than it uses. In this project we also had to develop an energy strategy for ventilation. All the materials are taken into consideration in a 60 years life cycle perspective, and then again to show that this building actually is able to go into plus energy. So theoretically, yes, some images. You can see on the upper right how we try to locate these group rooms to kind of frame the beautiful views of the landscape. An overview, unfortunately Norwegian, but you can see how these are the kind of toolbox for this environmental approach, what we had to take into consideration. Of course, solar harvesting, but also how you design the building itself, everything from the outdoor walls, highly insulated, how you organize the plan, the zoning of the plan, and so on. Another kindergarten project that is kind of opposite, that it's more a generic starter. Snøhetta has developed, I think it's now almost 10 years ago, a modular system trying to approach the increasing need of residential projects. That was the first entry, and it's based on a grid 4x4 meters in both directions and 3.2 in a height. That gives you again a ceiling height of 2.7 meters when you have done all the installation. So we built a demo house of this system. Here you can see some of the elements, which we also transferred into a kindergarten project that you see on the right side. So it's quite at the other edge of the project I showed you before. But still, it works with this generosity of space. It's a 4-group kindergarten that is organized in this very simple, as you can see in this very simple work model here, working with this atrium and outdoor-indoor relationship. You can see from the construction and some images of the finished project. Last project I will show you is it's more a feasibility study that we did with a private, how can we say, client who wants to develop an international museum for children's art in Oslo. And our client, she was very focused on this area in Oslo, which is on the now being under construction or development for decades, I would say. You can see here the opera, and some of the this big urban area is already built, but there's a lot more to come in the future. One is the big public library in Oslo, and it's also the Munch Museum. And also big residential mixed-use area and the so-called Vaikų that you saw on the image before. Actually, Snøhetta has designed one of the palace buildings here. So together with our client, we looked at possible future positions in this area for this child art museum. And that raises a, I think, very important topic, how the role of children in that kind of urban dense development, because as you can see here, there are of course, I mean this is an opera and ballet and you take children there, but there are actually almost no space that is dedicated for children in this area. So we thought that is a good opportunity, even though it's a museum, but still it's a program that is dedicated to children and of course those who are interested in that kind of art. So very simple illustrations, because we don't have a concrete plot still. It's more to show the possibility how to activate the ground floor area in this future development. And as you can see here, it takes two basic levels. One exhibition area here in the lower part, and the two-story edge with more education, small ateliers, and workshop-based activities that are linked to that museum. We also did the brand design for this in this feasibility study. As I told you before, Snøhetta also consists of graphic and brand designers. Yeah, as you can see here. Thank you very much for your attention.